Patrick Jane never needed a gun or a warrant to catch a killer because his real weapon was getting them to walk straight into a trap they built for themselves. So today, I'm going over some of the smartest ways Jane has ever caught someone, going from smart to absolutely brilliant. We start small, but this one is one of my favorites for how clean it is. In Flame Red, the team drives out to the tiny town of Marquesa, where a guy named Rich Garcia got burned alive inside his own car, and the arson is way too professional to pass as some accident. Everybody in town knows Tommy Olds, the local handyman that people treat like he's mentally challenged, and because of that, nobody looks at him twice. Teresa is on his side, because there's no way a slow guy could build a device that sophisticated, and that assumption is the exact cover Tommy spent years building. He figured out a long time ago that if people think you're simple, they excuse everything you do, and they stop watching you. Jane catches something off, though, because back at Tommy's trailer, he spots a copy of Moby Dick sitting there, which is a heavy read for a man everyone treats like a child. So in the interview Jane does his thing, he casually gets a detail about the book wrong and names the ship the wrong way, and Tommy instantly corrects him without thinking. That one reflex is all Jane needed, and he just smiles and tells Tommy the act is over, while the whole personality drops right there on camera. I think this one is brilliant because the whole thing runs on pure psychology, patience, and one tiny slip he engineered on purpose. I even mentioned him in my Smartest Criminals video. And if you think reading a fake persona is impressive, wait until you see the team fake an actual murder to break the next guy. This next one is executed by the team, but it's Jane's plan. In Blood In, Blood Out, Cho gets pulled back into his old neighborhood when a former gang friend named David turns up dead in an alley. Then it gets personal, because armed men break into Cho's apartment and rough up his girlfriend, so now Cho is running hot to the whole episode. They work their way to a douche manager named Adam Reed, who'd been blackmailing David, but the actual killer is Frank, the quiet janitor who was hiring David to steal for him and then killed him to keep him quiet. The problem is Frank will not crack, and he keeps his gloves on to hide the bruises on his knuckles. So the team pulls the bluff. Out in the dark parking lot, Cho fires his gun into the ground, dumps red food coloring all over Reed so it looks like blood, and Rigsby drags the fake body behind a truck like Cho just executed the guy on the spot. Then Cho calmly turns to Frank and threatens to do the exact same thing to him. Frank fully believes he just watched a cop murder a man in cold blood, so he folds instantly and confesses to killing David and attacking Cho's girlfriend. This one is awesome because it's pure psychological pressure. They made him believe the rules were gone and let his own fear do all the work. And speaking of selling a lie, the next one is even better. Here's where the traps start getting personal. In Red Badge, a criminal named McTeer turns up dead. And he's a guy Lisbon herself put away years earlier, and then the case turns on her fast. Her fingerprint is on the gun, she has no solid alibi, and worst of all, she genuinely cannot remember what she did that night. She fails the polygraph and gets suspended, and it really looks like she might have done it and blacked it out. Jane, however, doesn't buy it for a second, because when she can't recall the night even under hypnosis, he realizes she was drugged. Someone dosed her and framed her. So Jane and Lisbon build a trap out of her own suspension. They stage a full drunken breakdown at her house with pills and booze everywhere, so her therapist, Dr. Carmen, comes rushing over. Thinking she's seconds from shooting herself, Carmen tries to talk her down by describing the crime scene in soothing detail, including a cross that was near the body. That's the slip, because Teresa snaps completely sober and asks how he could possibly know about the cross. It was all an act. Carmen had been lifting her prints off a coffee mug for weeks and dosing her to erase her memory. I love this one because Jane flipped the entire frame around, turning the enemy's own confidence into the exact thing that exposed him. But now we get into the juicy category. This one is a proper puzzle box, and while the episode is crazy, it's honestly one of my favorites in the entire show. So basically, a brilliant mathematician named Noah gets shot by a killer dressed as a clown, who then clips off his index finger to open a fingerprint safe. Noah had secretly built what the show calls a universal decoder, a device that can crack any encryption on Earth, and a group of coders for hire led by a guy named Bunting had offered $2 million for it. Everybody in the episode is chasing that device. Jane's eye lands on the wife Daphne for a strange reason, because when the house got ransacked by the so-called intruder, the kitchen was the one room left untouched, and the kitchen is her domain. So whoever searched the place already knew nothing valuable was hidden there. Now Jane needs proof, so he sets the bait. He quietly has a jailed genius, Oliver, disable the decoder and prep a fake encrypted disk, then gathers everyone at Bunting's house, mentions the $2 million reward, and tests the device in front of Daphne. However, the device does absolutely nothing, but she just cannot help herself. So she sneaks over and flips the hidden switch to turn it back on because she wants that money badly. And that single move proves she knew exactly how the machine worked and had been lying the entire time. The decoded file even loops the words, "My wife killed me." Like, this one is really genius because instead of accusing her, Jane built a room where her own greed had to expose her. This is the one a lot of fans bring up, and for good reason. In Red John's Friends, a convicted man named Jared Renfrew, who is locked up for murdering a young woman named Undine, reaches out to Jane with an offer. He'll give up real information on Red John, and he proves he's serious by mentioning that Red John painted Mrs. Jane's toenails with her own blood, which is a detail that was never released to the public. In exchange, Jane has to clear him of a murder he swears he didn't do. Jared was convicted of a locked room killing, so on paper, only he could have done it. Jane reopens it anyway and starts pulling threads, finding out the key witness was paid to lie about the relationship. Then comes the part people remember, where Jane reconstructs how someone else could have gotten into that sealed room. He shows how you knock the key out onto a newspaper slid under the door, then reel the whole thing back with fishing line, which is the locked room trick that blows the conviction wide open. On top of that, Jane bluffs the entire Renfrew family that he's going public unless they pay him off purely to see who flinches, and to his own surprise, it's Jared's mother. She had killed Undine after learning the girl was secretly her husband's daughter, and she framed her own boy to teach him a lesson while keeping a vial of blood as her private confession. I think this is brilliant because it's two traps in one: the reconstruction that frees an innocent man, and the bluff that smokes out the real killer. And on top of that, the reconstruction of the crime scene is insanely brilliant. In this episode, a gallery owner named John Hennigan gets shot by art robbers when he refuses to hand over one specific painting, which is the one his late wife was painted in. Jane is sure a crew boss named McKay is behind it, but he has nothing that would hold up, so he builds a full week-long sting with the FBI art squad. They set up a fake mansion stuffed with genuine recovered art that the public doesn't know exists, put the whole team undercover in cocktail clothes, and slowly reel the gang in through a party. McKay shows up and threatens Jane and Teresa, demanding to be cut in on what he assumes is their heist, and Jane simply agrees to every term. That's the beauty of it, because McKay spends the entire con convinced he's the one calling the shots when every single move is being fed to him. The finish is choreographed down to the second, with a garbage truck and a marching band blocking his getaway route on the street, and the cab he desperately jumps into to escape is secretly being driven by Wiley straight to the arrest. I think this is so good because it's the illusion of choice done perfectly. McKay feels like the smartest guy in the room right up until the cuffs go on. And now we get to the two darkest traps on the list. This is where a trap stops being clever and starts being frightening. In Blinking Red Light, the team is hunting the San Joaquin Killer, a monster targeting teenage girls and leaving pebbles on their eyes. A true crime blogger named James Panzer is weirdly obsessed with the case, running the definitive website and playing the expert on TV, and Jane becomes certain that Panzer is the killer himself. The trouble is, there's no evidence at all, nothing forensic, and nothing that lets the team or the FBI touch him. Panzer's whole identity is being the brilliant mind the cops can never catch, and Jane realizes that ego is the only door in. So Jane goes on live television with him and starts working him over, needling the idea that the real killer is hiding in plain sight and getting sloppy. Then he drops the name Red John into the conversation. Panzer takes the bait and publicly rips Red John apart on air, calling him lazy and sloppy and nothing compared to the San Joaquin Killer. Jane's face barely moves because he knows exactly what he just did. Insulting Red John in the media is the same mistake that got Jane's own family killed. A few hours later, Panzer's body turns up under Red John's smiley face. I already covered the full episode on the channel, but as a trap, it belongs near the top because Jane couldn't reach Panzer through the law, so he fed one killer to a bigger one using nothing but pride. That's chess with human lives. And the final entry is the game he spent 10 years setting up. Everything Jane ever learned about traps comes together here. After a decade of hunting, Jane gets lured to a secluded church next to the cemetery where his wife and daughter are buried, set up by Bertram, which was the man most people believed is Red John. Jane walks in knowing he'll be searched, and sure enough, Bertram's man pats him down and takes the gun off him at the door. Here's the thing though, Jane already knew the real Red John would be there, and he already knew it was Sheriff Thomas McAllister, so he had planted a second gun under a bench inside the church long before he ever arrived. Bertram gets shot by his own guy, and then the real Red John steps out and reveals himself, feeling completely in control of the room. Jane stays calm and offers to show him one last thing. He places a handful of breadcrumbs into McAllister's open hand and releases a pigeon, which panics and flaps straight into the man's face. And in that one split second of chaos, Jane reaches under the bench, grabs the hidden gun, and shoots him. 10 years of obsession end in a couple of seconds because Jane outplanned him on every layer. In few episodes back, Jane learned that a Red John is afraid of birds, so this plan wasn't random at all. And while it took some chasing to finally nail Red John, I think this is the most brilliant trap in the entire show, because he had to predict the location, predict that he'd be disarmed, pre-plant a weapon, and then use something as small as a bird to buy the half second he needed. It's the perfect ending to the perfect list. The master manipulator setting one final stage and walking off it with something he chased for a decade. So that's going to be it for this video. If you got a trap I left out of this list, make sure to drop it in the comments and subscribe if you want more Mentalist breakdowns like this one.